The United States, people would say the most powerful military on earth, is bombing the poorest country on earth as we are having this show. So that obviously affects working people.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
The situation in Israel and Palestine has really kind of captured the minds of a lot of people in the United States, and labor has really started to coalesce around the position of supporting a ceasefire in Gaza. There's still, I think, a lot of work to do within the labor movement to see some action on that position being now the mainstream position. The AFL-CIO has endorsed that position. And your union is now a part of the National Labor Coalition for a ceasefire to try to do just that, to try to push and not just have it be, something that was tweeted out once and then you forget about. Right. Your union is one of them that's trying to push to make sure that this actually happens. But you and APWU were actually out front on this issue of a ceasefire before a lot of others were. There was some reporting in the New York Times about one of the executive board calls where you were, very in opposition to really, or not, I don't want to say opposition, but with a different stance than the rest of the executive board, staking out this position that a ceasefire is important and seeing justice in Palestine is important. Why there are two questions, or there are a couple of questions here that people will say immediately. And one is, you're an American trade union leader. Why are you talking about this conflict that's happening in another part of the world that, they would say is not affecting you? What would be your answer to folks that would ask that?
Well, we talked about solidarity a little earlier. Our solidarity doesn't stop at our borders. So one is, or shouldn't, one is we stand in solidarity with working people throughout the world and their struggles, and that includes the working people of Gaza. We are a union, and many others are like us. We believe in equality. We believe in social justice. We believe in human and labor rights. We believe in peace, and we believe in international solidarity. But deeper than that, who's asked to fight these wars? Who's demanded upon to go fight these, in this case, what would be an unjust war in our view? So here you have a deep threat of a widening war. Countries are being bombed across borders. The United States, the most, maybe in some ways, people would say the most powerful military on earth, is bombing the poorest country on earth as we are having this show. So one, there's a real danger of a wider regional war or even a world war. So that obviously affects working people throughout this country and throughout the world. The other thing is it's our tax dollars. The United States funds the Israeli military machine at about $4 billion a year after year. How that tax money is used and what it could be better used for is a working class issue of the United States. And then President Biden, as soon as October 7th took place, and we condemned the actions of Hamas in our statement. We unequivocally condemned it, but we also condemned this reaction on the part of the state of Israel that has targeted civilians, largely women and children, causing mass starvation, mass displacement, mass destruction of housing. These, you can't get around it. These are war crimes. And working people who pay taxes, we're different than Bezos of Amazon, all right, or Gates of Microsoft. Working people pay taxes. And we want our taxes used to help working people here, help our communities, and certainly help working people everywhere. And President Biden immediately went after October 7th to let's have billions and billions of more dollars to fund what? Keeping water, food, medical supplies from reaching a civilian and innocent population. So I think it is a workers issue. And you are right. Some people react that way, that, you know, why don't we just stick to our four walls of the post office? But unions at their best realize that when we leave our workplaces, we live in a community, we live in states, we live in a country, and we live in a world. And we can have an impact and should be concerned about what happens when we leave work and what's happening to our families, our communities, and the family of men, as we call it, throughout the world. So it's definitely a working class issue. And one of the reasons for a ceasefire, the immediate reason, is the cries of humanity. You know, unless people think that people that might have different religious backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, different national backgrounds, speak different languages, are second class or third class or fourth class or less than human. We have to listen to the cries of humanity. But beyond that, we also want to make sure this conflict doesn't spread into a regional or possible world war. We have a military budget, Jacob, that's $900 billion, almost $1 trillion a year. Think about what that money could be used for if it was cut in half. And we still have this massive military machine, but we got all that money that go into schools and housing, medical care, clean water, clean air, an EV transition, whatever it is. And so these are all very close and should be close to working people. And working people are generally told, leave the politics to somebody else. What they mean by that is leave the politics, the foreign policies, to Wall Street, to corporate America. They're not out here for us. They're out here for them.
It really is, if you think about it, you know, for longer than the time that it takes you to say it, it makes sense. You know, why would a union have a position on a war? You know, I mean, exactly like you said, a war is just, you know, working people, and in this case, conscripted working people, bombing other working people with the taxes of working people from across the world. So why would organized bodies of working people not have a position? It would actually, the strange thing would be for the organized working class to be silent on an issue of war. That's actually the strange thing. And yes, when they say when they tell us to stay out of politics or stay out of foreign policy, they're just saying, you know, let the bosses handle it, and that shouldn't, you know, because the bosses aren't going to die, right? It's going to be working people that are going to have to bear the brunt of these decisions one way or another. And the words that you used, a second question is, you know, as a Jewish person, why do you support the ceasefire? And you know, a lot of the words that I imagine that your answer would be pretty similar, right? You talked about, why do I, as a trade union leader, support a ceasefire in Gaza and justice in Palestine? Well, because I support, you know, justice, and I have values of solidarity and universal human rights, and you know, there were a lot of, you know, kind of spiritual words there in your explanation, and I imagine that your answer to why, as a Jewish person, you would support this, it would be pretty similar. You can tell me if I'm off.
No, you're on it. Look, I am a proud Jewish American. My family was decimated by the Nazi fascist, German-led Nazi fascist hordes. Some died in battle, some died in extermination camps, some died in work camps. My firstborn is named after a cousin of ours who was a famous anti-fascist partisan in France. So it's part of our history, it's part of our DNA, it's part of what has shaped me to even be part of the labor movement and the ongoing struggle for workers' rights and social justice. But coming from that history, when we say never again to a Holocaust and genocide and ethnic cleansing that targeted people based on who they are and killed over 6 million Jewish people, when we say never again, then that has to apply to everybody. And so I think Jewish people should be even more sensitive, whoever does it. And it can't be done. And we say never, not in our name. So, and there's a real effort, Jacob, to equate any criticism of the government of Israel would somehow that equates to be anti-Jewish or what we have termed as anti-Semitic. That's a big lie. The state of Israel and this Netanyahu government needs to be criticized. You don't target civilians. They're trying to wipe out 2.3 million people in an open air prison with nowhere to go. And so there's a lot of Jewish voices out here saying not in our name. And I'm certainly one of them. And we should reject the idea, and this is now happening in workplaces and college campuses, where people are stepping up and criticizing the actions of the government, are now being fired, relegated, thrown out of school, job opportunities canceled. That's a form of discrimination itself. So we have to be very careful to oppose any growing anti-Semitism, meaning the idea that you're going to target somebody because they're Jewish. But we also have to oppose targeting anybody because they're Muslim, Arab American, and so on. And our call was very simple. And you're right, a lot of unions have come on board, and we're glad for it. Some of the largest unions in the country, the NEA, the SEIU, the AFT now, the United Auto Workers, the CWA, have come to the same path. And our path is we condemn the as I said earlier, the Hamas attacks. We condemn what the Israel government has done, killing and targeting 30,000 people, mostly civilians. Mass starvation now is beginning to happen. And so we call for the release of the hostages on all sides. And we call for massive humanitarian aid. We're not going to be able to figure out on this broadcast today to solve the complex historical issues that led to this problem. But we can fight for a stopping of the hostilities, a stopping of this indiscriminate bombing, and certainly call and see if there's a path, and there are many different opinions on the path, but some kind of path forward to peace.
Mark Dimondstein, president of the American Postal Workers Union, representing 200,000 Postal Service employees across the country. Really appreciate your time. You're very generous and patient today. Thank you very much, and look forward to talking to you again.
Jacob, thanks so much for having me anytime, and all your good listeners out there, and you keep up the good fight for unions, for workers' rights, and for social justice.
Thanks, brother. Talk soon.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.